Over the last few months, several public meetings have been held to judge the public view on making changes to the Clevedon Community Hospital. The proposals put forward by the people who run the hospital, the North Somerset Clinical Commissioning Group, boils down to two options: to either leave things as they are, more or less, or to remove the 18 existing beds and place them elsewhere in the Somerset community, allowing the organisers to make use of the space to develop further the outpatient, diagnostic and daycare facilities. The original health facility on the site in Old Street was a dispensary opened in 1845, followed 20 years later by the construction of the present building and the opening of a health centre on the site. The Clevedon Cottage Hospital was finally opened in 1875 and has served the town ever since. At the end of January, another public meeting was held at the Prince's Hall, this time by the group, the League of Friends of Clevedon Hospital. Inside, the hall was filling up nicely, with over 300 people attending, many repairing to the Jubilee Lounge to find a seat. The meeting was chaired by the Hospital Friends Chairman, Mary House, and several interested parties were invited to make their views known. The first speaker had a historical family reason to be there.
Well, good evening, everybody. As Mary has said, my name is Julia Elton, and my great-great-grandfather, Sir Arthur Hallam Elton, built the hospital in 1875. This explains why there is a photograph of a bewhiskered old gent in the reception area. Well, you might say that I'm the ghost of Christmas past, looking back mistily to some long ago time when Clevedon needed a hospital, and they certainly said that to me on the radio this morning. Except that past was present until a very short time ago. It must have been thought that the hospital served a valuable purpose because we were going to have a shiny new one. This was cancelled in July 2012 owing to economic difficulties. But only a year later, the Clinical Commissioning Group came up with the idea of removing all the recovery beds, effectively ending the hospital's existence. This is going from one extreme to the other. Those beds will be scattered like dandruff through the nursing and care homes of Clevedon and North Somerset, and the building itself looks likely to be turned into somewhere to go for bereavement counselling and coffee with outpatient services attached. Actually, Crews already provides excellent bereavement counselling with coffee.
The treasurer of the Friends of the Hospital was next to speak. He outlined in some detail the background to the present situation, concluding with this statement.
To sacrifice beds that have been in Clevedon Cottage Hospital, as I've known them, because I've been in Clevedon for over 40 years, that have been there since 1875, is nothing less than irresponsible. In conclusion, I cannot fail to make comparison with the performance of North Somerset Clinical Group with Gloucester Clinical Commissioning Group and Somerset Clinical Commissioning Group, or their PCT predecessors. The former, for example, has built cost-effective community hospitals in Tewkesbury, Dursley, Moreton-in-the-Marsh, and a refurbished hospital in Bourton-on-the-Water, In fact, the Tewkesbury Hospital was opened in October of last year, only 4 months ago. So community hospitals are still being built. And the interesting thing about Tewkesbury, and I visited it, and it is a fantastic facility, it was built for half the cost of the one that they turned down in Clevedon. And even in Somerset, you only have to go as far as Bridgewater, which is not a million miles from Taunton, when a 30-bed rebuild at a cost of 33 millions is under construction, partly funded by a £16 million grant from the NHS. It begs the question, ladies and gentlemen, does the North Somerset CCG really know what they are doing? We have a catchment area here of 100,000 people in our part of North Somerset, a further 120,000 in Weston-super-Mare. Now, the Tewkesbury Hospital was justified on a catchment area of about 75,000 people. So here we are in North Somerset. There are no plans at all to provide decent hospital care because Weston-super-Mare is under threat and they want to get rid of the beds in our hospital. We have the choice, ladies and gentlemen. Fight for our beds or lose them. It is, in my opinion, a no-brainer. Thank you for listening to me.
So as a GP who lives and works in Clevedon, I feel passionate about the future of Cottage Hospital. Not only the beds, but also I feel it might be a slippery slope if the beds go, what's going to happen to the minor injuries units, the outpatients, all of those, and we want all of those to keep going. And we never know when any of us might use them, and so I would strongly like to support the case. Thank you for listening. I'm very sorry that I'm unable to be here to join you tonight, but I have to be in the House of Commons to vote on the government's immigration bill, which is an issue of significant importance to a very large number of people in North Somerset, as demonstrated by the large number of letters and emails I've had on the subject. I was particularly looking forward to the meeting to make clear my absolute commitment to the retention of the Cottage Hospital itself, and more particularly, the retention of the beds there. You will know that I raised the issue of Clevedon Community Hospital in an adjournment debate in the House of Commons on the 5th of December 2012. I pointed out that there has been a cottage hospital in Clevedon since 1874 and that it has provided care for more than 100,000 patients living in Clevedon and the surrounding area over the years. Our outstanding League of Friends has spent over £500,000 on building improvements and in providing endoscopy, ultrasound and other facilities. They have been fully involved in plans for a new hospital, and at the time of my House of Commons debate, plans were still being discussed for a possible relocation to a new site. We now know that despite a full business case having been produced and endorsed, that the project was ultimately deemed unaffordable. This was particularly disappointing, as I believe the company in charge of the project would have been able to deliver it at a reasonable cost and on time. I raise this short summary of the position because it's an all too familiar story to us. When Ham Green was closed, we were promised that there would be a cottage hospital in Portishead to relieve some of the pressure on Clevedon. We then lost Orchard View and the crucial respite care beds which it provided, especially for disabled patients. We were assured that alternative beds would be found, but that never happened. Now, not only do we seem to have lost the prospect of a replacement hospital, but consultation about the future use of the current site seems to have raised the possibility of losing even the few beds that we still have in our community. Let me make it clear that I would regard the loss of these beds as absolutely and completely unacceptable. Capacity seems to be being lost in the north of the district, while Western Hospital consumes large amounts of funding. It's essential that we keep facilities as close to our patients as possible. We're all aware that given the current guidelines for infection control, the need for equipment such as hoists and an increasing desire for privacy among patients, the current number of beds will need to be reduced. This should not in any way be used as a pretext for the removal of inpatient beds. Our local GPs have made it very clear that they see the maintenance of this facility as an essential part of providing a quality health service in the locality. There is another argument for the maintenance of inpatient beds. Using such beds efficiently can have a beneficial effect on the whole of the running of the local healthcare system, including its cost. We have all seen examples of patients discharged too early from acute hospitals directly to their homes, only to be readmitted at a later date. This is both bad care and expensive. If patients are able to benefit from the intermediate care, then they're likely to go home fully recovered and have a lower rate of readmission. This means that the cost of having such inpatient beds in a community hospital cannot simply be measured by the direct capital and service costs, but needs to be seen in the context of a properly balanced health system. I hope that this issue can be properly resolved in our own locality. If it's not, then I will not hesitate to arrange to meet with government health ministers to discuss the issue and to raise it once again on the floor of the House of Commons. May I take this opportunity to thank those who have arranged tonight's meeting on a subject which is of crucial importance to all the residents of Clevedon and the surrounding district. And I declare an interest in being one of those residents, because who knows when any of us may need the service. Thank you very much.
You've heard quite a lot of reports and opinions and expressions, and now is your chance to voice your opinions. May I ask you to make your remarks short and to the point, so that everybody gets a chance who would wish to have their say.
I had the great pleasure and privilege of serving my patients in the Cottage Hospital, and I valued it very highly, and we must continue to fight for this. Just in a few words, what is the way forward? How are we going to move from here? Because you will have all our support.
What is the next action plan, please? There's lots and lots of brain power here, energy, and people who are obviously interested in the views that have been expressed this evening so well. So what's next, please? As the doctor said, what's the action plan? Thank you.
Judging by the number of people here tonight, there must be great concern in the community, indeed anxiety about the future of the Cottage Hospital. And I don't suppose there's many of us here haven't been personally involved or had a family member that have benefited from the services of the Cottage Hospital. Apart from the inpatients' beds, we have a lot of other sort of facilities that are provided an extremely sort of useful service to the community: the diagnostic unit, the physio unit, and the consultant clinic. But most important of all are the inpatients' beds. Why? Because they look after elderly people. And where do elderly people want to be nursed? Near their home. Why? Because they can be visited. And it doesn't just affect on the patients in the beds, it has an effect on the relatives as well. If relatives can't visit elderly patients, the whole family becomes distressed. And I don't know whether people realise, but for an elderly person to travel into Southmead is not easy. And that is stressful and sometimes expensive as well. So if the beds go, I think it will be disaster for the community.
My first recollection of the Cottage Hospital is a painful one, because my mother received a letter from Mabel Camp, the matron, saying I was causing a noise and a nuisance. I had a tanning and I've never forgotten it. But I think one thing we have to be sure tonight is what we are actually trying to do. I think to me, we have to preserve the facility that we've got. To talk of a new hospital is maybe 5 or 10 years, 15 years down the line. And we mustn't be sidetracked by that. We must fight to keep what we've got. But I think we may have to be prepared to put our hands in our pockets to help keep it. Because the money is not there to do it through the state. And it may be that we have to help.
I've heard many rumours going round that the decision has already been made. And, you know, I would like to confirm that it's still an open option. I'm just hoping it is. Thank you.
I understand as well on the medical grapevine that the decision has been made. I have been told that you are going to have ophthalmology outpatients here at Clevedon. Now, ophthalmology is a very expensive specialty. The money has already been found, if not the equipment purchased. And I was also told that it is very unfortunate that the beds would have to go. Now, why they have to go to have ophthalmology, I don't know. This came directly from a person who is directly involved in this. It's very recently. I noticed Dr. Backhouse is here this evening, and I wonder if through the chair I could ask, could she confirm what I have said or refute it?
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Mary Backhouse and I'm a GP in Ailsey. My patients use the hospital. I and my family use the hospital. I recognise the importance of the hospital. As the Clinical Commissioning Group, we have been looking at options and we have been doing some early engagement. That is as far as it has got. So we took a report to the meeting in December and we're going to talk to the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee in February. No decisions have been made, no commitments have been made. I've not heard of any ophthalmology clinics being set up, and you know, my colleague who are here with us would have heard that.
So why was I told by the person who is involved in this that this was what was going to happen? This was something I happened to meet this person, and he told me this. Doesn't live in Clevedon, as far as I know, and he was quite open about it. Now, I find it very strange that you're saying that this hasn't been considered, because at the last, at a previous meeting that I went to, where you were present, we were told that there would be additional outpatient clinics, for example, ophthalmology. Now, ophthalmology is very expensive, so I mean, there's lots of money obviously floating around to provide all the kit they require. I'm finding it very difficult that you say that this hasn't been considered.
So, my understanding of the position on the outpatients department is that the community services have looked at what the use of the clinics are and have identified that the majority of clinics currently happen on the Wednesday. So they've identified that there is space for other clinics to attend. It's really important when you have expensive facilities that you use them as effectively as possible, and so that's an important thing to do. As far as I know, no decisions have been made about what clinics are going to go. So the conversation about the beds, I think, has arisen from a conversation that we had where I was asked to guarantee the future of the beds a number of years ago. I have to be honest, and I have to be aware that facilities are regularly inspected and that the Care Quality Commission come into facilities and assess them for the safety, for the cleanliness, for the quality of the care, many different aspects. And I couldn't, hand on my heart, say that I could guarantee that in 10 or whatever years' time that the beds would be open, because of the legislation that comes and because of the guidelines that come. And so in the time that I've been involved in this, I know we've had to reduce, looking at my colleagues in the front row, from 21 beds. So we had to reduce from 21 down to 18 beds because of issues about handling people's safety and about making sure that people aren't at risk of infection. So we were having problems with some infection. There has not been any infection for how many years? 2 years, 3 years? It's great. So, you know, I think what we've got is a good service, it's a responsive service, but we have to make sure that we're following legislation as well. So we have to make sure that we're following guidelines. I met a member of CQC informally on Friday, and she told me that there has been a recent visit, and for the moment they're satisfied, and that's really good news.
My question really has been usurped in a sense because there's somebody from the CCG here. I was wondering how the strength of the feeling of this meeting, and it clearly is almost unanimous, I would have thought, if not unanimous, support for the beds, how this is going to be conveyed in terms of the strength of feeling to the CCG.
And in my role as a local councillor, I think a lot of people in the town know me. I'm always asked about the beds, and I haven't met one single person in all the people I see over a long period of time saying that they want to see the beds gone. They don't. They want those beds there. They are important to our community, very important. So I think the whole ethos, not only of this meeting, but of the town, the whole community is, we want those beds to remain.
I think we should beware, because I'm a little bit sceptical about the way this is going to twist. Obviously there's a financial point in this, but I did hear a doctor at one of the meetings I went to at the town council meeting make a very good point, and it's this: the elderly people that are in those beds in our hospital, they're not unduly concerned that the beds are maybe a bit too close together. Maybe the latest facilities are not there, they haven't got all the gizmos. Maybe the nurses in the corner of the ward are making a little bit of noise because they haven't got a room to have their meeting and it's a bit chattery. Forget all that. They're happy because they're in their own locality. They're with the GPs. They're with the GPs that they know and trust. They can see their people, they've got their visitors, their local people, their families around them. And that means so much. But beware, because it seems to me if we shift from the budget and we can show that we can afford it, the next obstacle is going to be that, well, we can't, it's not really up to scratch, it's not up to standard, so we've got to lose the beds. Beware, because that doesn't wash with me.
You asked for feedback earlier in terms of what people's views are. I don't know why you don't just ask us now, because it feels like a fairly unanimous view. I, for one, would vote to keep what we have, if not enhance it. I can't imagine that anybody here feels any differently. So, if you feel that way, tell the guys here, forget the feedback forms and put that back to the CCG in terms of their feedback.
I was going to ask for a straw poll at the end of this session. Would you like to have it now? Yes. I'm asking you if you would endorse the following resolutions. 1. To conduct meaningful engagement with the CCG regarding provision of future health services at Clevedon Community Hospital. 2. Pending the outcome of discussions as in 1, put a pause on any present work by the study group regarding the removal of beds. Can I have a show of hands if you agree these resolutions? Thank you. Now I have to ask, are you happy for this committee to continue to come to this end? Thank you very much. We shall continue our work.
I came here this evening thinking that you were trying to patch up the hospital because the other one has been cancelled. I wouldn't have minded if they postponed it, but they cancelled it, and that's very wrong, because we do need a hospital here. I'm going to make a suggestion that that resolution, could it not be sent to all the local authorities, like Nailsea, Clevedon, Clevedon councillors here, at least I hope they are, and get their support as well, because what I can see of it, and that gentleman over there said, a decision has been made, and I think you need all the help that you can get. There's another way we can do it, but whether we're going to do it, is get a petition from people. People who have Port Z, Clevedon, there's a group of people put together and go and get those petition and sign it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chairman of Clevedon Town Council, and I can assure you that I am fully behind keeping this hospital open. I've been going and fighting for it for quite a long time. I was just looking at my papers going back to 2006 when they first decided, or the idea of building a new hospital was first came about. My concern then was maybe they're going to try and close this hospital on us. The beds must stay. There is no doubt about it, 100%. Thank you very much.
I looked as the resolution was being voted on those in front, but I wasn't able to see those behind. Could I ask that perhaps you extend the voting to show any abstentions or any disagreements, please?
If you were against the resolutions, could you raise your hand, please?
No reason not to. Surely there's a legal challenge that could be taken to the CCG anyway. But secondly, there seems to be a lot of problem with perhaps infection rates in the hospital being problematic if beds are a bit too close together. Surely, if people are moved willy-nilly between nursing homes, which we all know have high infection rates, there's going to be far more infections. People are going to become ill, they're going to have to go back to main hospital. It just seems absolutely ridiculous. There's also a cost implication. If people are ill in the nursing homes, they're going to have to stay there longer. Who is going to foot the bill for the nursing homes? Because they're not going to keep their charges low. They're going to put those charges back to the NHS, and who'll be subsidising those? The private patients who are already subsidising NHS patients or patients who can't afford to pay the full care costs already. It's just pushing money across to people who can't say no to it. It's nonsensical.
And my dad was actually born in 1900 and proudly could say that in 1915 he was operated on to remove his appendix, and the hospital was actually waited for the wounded to come in. But he was really proud. We must save our beds. And I am a Clevedonian. Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm a retired nurse, and it's come across quite strongly that we have a lot of really good nursing practice that's going on in Clevedon, and I think we should encourage the CCG to look at the good practice that's going on and take that forward and celebrate what is happening in Clevedon and really use it, and perhaps use it for other community hospitals. But we certainly shouldn't be closing beds. We're doing well, and the nursing to be doing well is something to be really celebrated. And the infection rates show that, the going home rates show that. There is so much in nursing that is now not doing quite so well, and here in Clevedon we're doing well. And let's take that forward. Please, CCG, listen to that. Look at what Clevedon's doing and use it as an example for other places.
I'd like to publicly note my disappointment that Liam Fox isn't here tonight. I think it's a disgrace that he doesn't deem this important enough for him to attend and send a speaker on his behalf. And the point another speaker made, what can we do to move forward? Well, one thing is politicians are accountable to us. Don't put your cross against his name at the drawing board on this issue when we're going to the ballot box next. On the other issue, Mr. Shotman raised that we should put our hands in our pockets. We do. We pay taxes. You cannot run publicly funded services. You cannot run these services by going around cap in hand. And what's Mr. Chopland's cheque that he's going to put into this this good cause?
I think I represent quite a number of people in this hall this evening, and this is the older people, and I think we could substantiate our cause by taking a survey of the number of older people within North Somerset, because I think it is quite a factor, and I would predict that within the next 5 or 10 years that we'll not just only need our cottage hospital as it is today, but we'll need an extended one. And I think the NHS, it starts thinking outside the box, because if you haven't got the facility of a new building out where the proposed site was, why don't you think in terms of a commercial property like the Comet building, which has adequate car parks and, I would suspect, sufficient space to expand into a hospital at minimal cost compared with the original ideas.
I don't think we need worry that it's a done deal now. The National Health provide the hospital. We are the people who use it, and if we insist that we need a hospital in Clevedon, as we've taken for granted all these years, surely anybody has to listen to what we have to say.
I would make the point that we have to do something concrete while we're all here tonight. And I would suggest we should think in terms of a judicial review, ready to start that, that judicial review should the decision go against the population, and it is the population of Clevedon. And I'm sure that Mr. Shopton will put £500 in, matching my £500.
I'm very sorry to see that Mr. Liam Fox isn't here tonight. I can understand why, but there's another way around that. I think it's every few months there's a surgery, and if half the people here tonight turned up and they couldn't get an appointment, there's a new song out. We want our beds. We want our beds, and we want our hospital. So I'm before this head, and I believe the next surgery is in March. I don't know when it is in Clevedon, but believe me, democracy works sometimes. Try it.
I would urge everybody here to become a member of Health Watch North Somerset. It's free membership, anybody can join. You can have newsletters and email contact. It really keeps you in the loop as to what's going on. And for anybody else that attended the meeting that was held here by Health Watch, and we had Ian Williams from the CCG here, the feedback forms that were completed at that meeting, I personally gave 6 hours of my time voluntarily to Health Watch, and I typed everybody's comments and feedback up, and I'm aware that report with everything that I typed has gone to the CCG. So I can confirm that the CCG have had written confirmation from Health Watch of the comments that were raised at the last meeting held here.
I'm also from Portishead, and I'd like to say how much we in the wider community appreciate that Clevedon College Hospital has been extended to the wider area. I know a number of people from Portishead who have spent very valuable time recuperating in Clevedon College Hospital. But be careful about false promises. I've lived in Portishead all my life, and I remember well what Lady Elson said, that promises of a bed facility in Portishead would be provided once Ham Green was closed down. It never happened. It was promised, but it never happened. So be careful, even if we have to come down to new facilities for beds in Clevedon would be provided if the present ones were removed from the Cottage Hospital in favour of clinics. It may never happen. It may never happen.
I'm not a Clevedonian, I've only been here a couple of years, so I hope you'll forgive me for contributing to this, but I do actually use the Cottage Hospital. I'd like to ask all the doctors in this area whether they have thought of putting forward a plan to increase facilities for treatment of the conditions which are common amongst elderly people, given the fact that we do represent a higher proportion of the population in this area than the national average. I feel that we have got to be proactive rather than just defensive. And I would also suggest that we perhaps give some thought to why this has all happened and in whose interest it is.
I was very much involved with fighting to keep Orchard View open. Liam Fox very kindly helped me in this fight, but as you will have heard, we lost that fight. Please don't let it happen to Clevedon. We got promises with places for beds, which never happened at Orchard View. So, following on from previous comments, don't let that happen to Clevedon as well. Thank you.
I'd just like to say I'm a district nurse in Clevedon, and I've looked after quite a lot of people who've come out of Clevedon Hospital and back to their own homes. And I just want to say that from all the people I've looked after, the overwhelming response of them has been that it's been a totally positive experience being in Clevedon. It might not be the most up-to-date building, but someone said that if you can manage in Clevedon Hospital, you can manage in your own home, and that is exactly what it's like for them going back. That's all I wanted to say really, and that's, well, the other thing is just slightly contrast that with some people I've looked after who've gone through the nursing home rehab situation, which has been proposed as the alternative model, and that hasn't always been a very positive experience from what I've, just in my own sort of experience as a nurse in Clevedon. So all the patients in Clevedon love the hospital and have had a really positive time there. So.
We are not fools. We are not going to be put off easily. And I think the CCG, certainly on the basis of what we've heard tonight, know that they have a real fight on their hands. And I would say that they would have to cross a few dead bodies before they actually get rid of those beds. We hear about cost. I mean, I was told that if Weston-super-Mare beds were cheaper than Clevedon, people would be sent to Weston-super-Mare. Now that again is disgraceful. But can I tell you that the cost of a bed is not acceptable under legislation as a reason for getting rid of beds. They have to have another reason for getting rid of beds. And if they try to say that quality of care is one of them and infection control is another, my God, have they got a fight on their hands. Thank you.